I guess. We'll call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, September 28th. We are meeting at 5:40 at the Twill County Auditorium located at 47 South Main Street in the downstairs auditorium. We'll do a roll call. We have Kel Martin, who's on the phone. You there, Kel? We have Jess Bird, who is online.
Here.
Terry Miner.
Here.
Scott Duray.
Here.
Craig Smith is here. We also have our attorney online and our recorder here today. First item is a Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please lead us in that, Terry?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
The United States of America and to the republic under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move into our public comments. The first person who wanted to give comment tonight was our chairman, Jeff Bird, who is out of town. Let's have a Wes.
Hey, floor's mine.
It is.
Depends on where.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right, I got some doom and gloom for you. Just preface everything, it's not the end of the world, right? The sky is not quite falling, but I am gonna say my little piece, and then I'm gonna go hunt some deer. So anyway, here goes. So you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So being on a city council is pretty hard sometimes, especially when we don't all agree, right? It's been a pretty hard week. I'm grateful for this time. It's given me some time for some introspection and learn, dig deep, learn some things about myself. I knew that the concept of the PID has not ever sit right with me, but I had a hard time putting my finger on why. And then it finally made sense and hit me that maybe it's some of these books that I've read in my life, or really, I don't really read. I listen to books. Anyway, I'm going to list some of these books to you because I want you guys to know that, some of these hesitations and problems that I have with the things that we do in city council doesn't really, it comes from me, but they're not my wild hairs, right? They're true and correct principles that I've learned in my life. And anyway, I'm going to share some of these books with you. In no particular order. Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. 3 books by Murray N. Rothbard. America's Great Depression. The Mystery of Banking. And Man, Economy, and State. And I'll admit I only made it through about half that last one. It's pretty tough. Pretty tough read or listen. The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Liberty Defined by Ron Paul. And last but not least, The Proper Role of Government by Ezra Taft Benson. Now, these authors scream at me that there is something wrong with the concept of the PID. And I've struggled to be able to put it into words, especially at the meetings, because I get awfully nervous and my mind draws a blank, but I'm reading here. So this is my best shot at being able to put this into words. And that is the principle that is in violation here is that the burden of risk should always be upon the investor. And this is one of the principles that has made America so great. A man can take some time, labor, money, and other resources, risk losing them all to build something incredible, and then reap the reward at the end. This man is keenly aware of the pitfalls all around him and is always looking out for more along the way because it's his labor, his money, and his resources on the line. When this is no longer the case, really bad things can happen. A tax-based PID allows the investor to offload some of his risk to another group or groups of people who have no skin in the game. They don't have millions of dollars to lose. The chances for overspending and malinvestment are extremely high. Because these people are not invested themselves, they will treat the dollars that they receive like kids playing in a sandbox, when in reality, they are playing with matches and gasoline. However, these people won't get burned. It will be the subjects of the PID tax that will be burned. Just because something is legal does not make it right. These PIDs will not age well. They are still in their infancy in Utah. It might take 5, 10, or 20 years, but you will see that I'm right in the end. I've warned that we should not be making policy based on imminent needs of today. We should be weighing all policy decisions based on sound principles with an eye towards the future. A government body that is always caving into the pressures of the day will always be forced to choose the lesser of two evils. And what happens when you always are deciding between the lesser of two evils? You will always choose evil. Anyway, that's my soapbox. That's what I wanted to say. I'm not going to stick around for the voting. I think the things that I would vote for don't need my help, and we all know where I stand on the PID. I trust you guys, and I really do. I really appreciate you guys and the time that you put into this. And nobody knows more than I do how hard you guys work for the city and for your community. And I know you consider this, and I know you'll do what you believe needs to be done, and we'll just move on from there. But anyway, I'm gonna head out unless you have anything else for me, and say good night, and I'll see you when I get back.
Well said.
Jess.
Thanks for the homework.
Yeah.
Well said.
Be careful, travel safe, and we'll excuse you from the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Night. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment?
Is this on, Jen?
It should be.
Yes.
Just a couple of comments. I recognize Jess's comments and can understand where he's coming from. And I think that there's also broader considerations and other things that need to be thought about when we talk about a PID. To start out with, the community for probably 5-6 years now has been struggling with growth, grappling with the question, the process, how to manage it. And one of the things that we've heard extensively is that the community wants, or would like, I would say, infrastructure to come before the growth, infrastructure to come before the homes. There's always been a concern that we build the homes before all the roads get put in, before the intersections get put in, before that supporting infrastructure comes. There is clear reason for that, and it comes down to just the ability to pay for it. And one thing that the PID does that benefits the community, I think it's important to think about what benefits does the community get out of a PID. Jess is concerned, and rightly so, well said, about the benefits that might arise for the person that's taking the risk, but there are significant benefits to the community. And one of those is that infrastructure coming beforehand. The other one is kind of along those lines is for the organization that's going to be responsible for a lot of that infrastructure, at least the water and the sewer, and that's SPID. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to reach out to SPID, but if you do, I think you'll hear a very clear answer from SPID that they would much rather have all the sewer lines and all the water lines go in day one, instead of having those piecemealed over 10 years or 7 years or whatever it is, and installed by 3, 4, 5 different contractors, whatever it is based on that journey of 5 or 7 years. But to have one contractor come in and put in all of that backbone infrastructure and sewer and water for SPID is very attractive because of the quality, the consistency, the connectivity of all of that. The other one that I think we've heard from the community a lot is they want the growth to pay its own way. They want the growth to pay as best it can for what it, what it comes. When it comes to the community, let those people that are coming pay for that growth. The PID is probably the only way to guarantee that. We've heard that the new growth should pay for the new growth. Well, that's what the PID does. Another thought of what the PID does for the community is related to the commercial development, at least in the case of Oak Point, is related to the commercial development. We know that the lifeblood of any city is commercial. I'm sure that many people have told you that over the last few months, if you've talked to other cities in that. Well, Erda City has some good potential commercial. The large field just north of Gus War's property that sits there on Highway 36 has a significant amount of Highway 36 frontage. It actually has my niece's 3 heifers in it. And if you talk to anybody, they probably say, oh, that's great commercial ground. That's great commercial ground. It has all that highway frontage. You can turn in off of Bryan Road. That's commercial ground. Well, no, what that is a field with 3 heifers in it. And guess what? They're all Jersey heifers. Until there is sewer line, water line, gas line, power line, and a road in there, you don't have commercial. You got a field with 3 Jersey heifers in it. I look here in Tooele County and, Tooele City, and I look at some of the commercial development that's going in. Particularly one that comes to mind is that around the 7-Eleven there on Main Street and 1000 North. And I go, that ground isn't as good as what Erda City's got. The commercial around Highway 36 and the Parkway, 33rd Parkway, thank you. The 33rd Parkway is much better commercial. It's more central. It's easier to get into. It's more visible. It's more accessible to all the communities in the valley. But why are they building that commercial in in Tooele City right now? They got sewer and water. Because they got a stoplight. Because they got gas. Because they got electricity. You can do that day one in Erda. Commercial will come down there because it's better commercial. If you're opening a business and you compare those 2 locations, I think the majority of the people pick the one in Erda City. You get calls all the time from people saying, hey, when's your commercial going to be ready? When's your commercial going to be ready? Well, if we can get a PID in a year or so. If we don't get a PID, call us back in 5 or 6 years. It's that simple, and we're going down into we're starting into a downturn in the economy that I think will exacerbate a lot of those things. But, if we can put that in day one, it sure helps, and I think it'll help Erda City and the citizens of Erda City. Thanks.
Do you have anyone online, Jen?
We have a few people, but no hands are raised.
I make a motion, we close public comment.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. We close the public comment. All in favor? Aye.
You still there, Cal? Is that an aye?
It's unanimous. All right. Next thing is the consideration of resolution 22-29, approving interlocal cooperative agreement with Tooele County for extension of the road maintenance services. Tooele County met last night and voted to extend services for 30 days while we do a comprehensive agreement that should last hopefully for years. That being said, our current agreement runs out at the end of the month, and so we need to, or Friday, and so we have to do, to extend those services. They want to extend them under the same terms as last quarter for that month while we negotiate what our future contracts will look like. Any discussion on this?
I think it's the right, yeah, I think it's our only choice right now.
I agree. Right now, it's our only choice, I believe.
Got anything, Cal?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I make a motion, we accept the interlocal agreement. The
Second.
resolution 2220.
I second it.
All right, it's been moved by Terry and seconded by Scott. We'll do a roll call vote. Kel Martin.
Yes.
Craig Smith is a yes. Scott?
Yes.
Terry? All right, it's unanimous. Our next item is resolution 2230. Resolution. Was that you, John?
No.
Okay. Resolution approving interlocal cooperative agreement with Will County for an extension of law services, the law enforcement services. Same thing, to the end of the month of November, first day of November, when they have their next, meeting on this, to extend those same services for policing.
And I assume dispatch is part of that as well. Even though they're a separate entity, did we need a separate thing for dispatch?
I don't believe we need a separate thing for dispatch because they bill us through directly. But everything here, it was just an extension of services as agreed to for the last quarter. I think it's much like the last one. We don't have a lot of choice right now.
So I move we approve resolution 2230.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Scott and seconded by Terry to approve that. We'll do a roll call vote. I vote yes. Kel Martin,
Yes.
Terry Minor,
Yes.
Scott Dubay.
Yes.
It's unanimous. All right, moving on to the consideration of a resolution 22-31 approving an amendment to the public infrastructure policy for Erda. I suspect this will have more conversation than the last two.
I don't think so. So we end up with the 5 or 6,
Well,
or split it and go 5.5?
I sent some thoughts that I'd had out to everyone of how we could maybe amend this. And I believe John had some ideas about where to put it and how to put it in the PID policy. I'll read what I sent and we'll discuss it from there. So I said in the evaluation criteria after paragraph 3 is that our mixed use commercial and residential may have a mill levy on residential and commercial. Up to 3 mills on residential and 5 mills commercial should be the standard. 3 to 5 mills on residential and 5 to 10 mills commercial will be considered only if the 3 following can be proven by the applicant. 1 significant value to the city, 2 significant value to the current residents of Erda, 3 significant value to the future residents of the PID area. For mixed use PID to be considered, it must have a minimum of 200,000 square feet of commercial with a value of 5 million or more. Kel Martin suggested we raise that value to 6 million or more. And I don't think I have any issue or problem with that.
Can we say appraised value? So it has to
Oh,
be
I
appraised.
believe we could say an appraised value.
Yeah. I think so too. Kale and I talked about, it needs to be an appraised value, not just like a county assessor or something like that. It needs to be an appraised value.
Yes. One other thing that I would like to put in here that I didn't before, and I might have put in further down here, is I think we ought to have in there, over 5 mils for residential or 10 mils commercial will not be considered as a policy. I think we should have those as a baseline in there. If you're more than that, you won't consider it. You have any thoughts on that, Kel?
Yes, 6 million gives us a inflation or whatever the economy does, so 5 million would be in 2-3 years. We've seen inflation is kind of lately, so we want to go as high as reasonable.
I could agree with that. So John, how's going to be the best way to implement and put this in?
Based on 3 votes and directions, I would recommend you give the city attorney direction to modify it and bring it back, because I don't feel comfortable modifying it on the fly.
I think we have agreement from the council with that. And they're
That's more than enough for me.
Is 5 mil, is that mill levy ceiling reasonable, John?
Well, right now you have in the policy for commercial a limitation of mill levy of 10. So, reasonable is a question of interpretation. I don't know.
Okay. I remember Marcus telling us that the legal limit is 15 mil, but he said that's extremely high. So that tells me we don't need 15 mil.
I think we should go up that high. If we go that high, you could be cost prohibitive of a business being able to come in. They might look at it and say the taxes on that will be so high that we don't want to be there. And that's a fine line that I think we need to walk. And I think capping it at 10 and saying it should be lower than that is reasonable.
Reasonable.
So did I ask Kel? Do you have anything else to add, Kel?
Nope, I don't know nothing else. It's
All right. So should we make a motion to table this resolution and have you put this in the PID policy, John?
Yes, I would think, give me direction. I'll revise the draft and send it out to each member of the council for their approval before the next meeting. So is it consensus, 3 votes to have, so here's kind of the way I thought about it is, I'll turn into the policy itself here. Give me just a second. So leave paragraph 3 alone. So there's no mill levy, so to speak, or no ongoing liability for residential, solely primary residential. And then I'd make a new 4 and add that mixed use in there, that you'll consider mixed use, which is a commercial and residential. And you could use these same amounts that Craig has in his email, 3% for residential and 5 for commercial, or you could go 10 commercial. And then you could say one of the conditions of this would be a significant value to the city, and you can establish what that means. And he has 200,000 square feet and a value of $5 million. So the value would have to be the anticipated value upon completion, I would guess, not the value of the raw land prior to the PID. So it'd probably be an estimated appraised value when finished or something like that. So is that kind of the consensus?
6 mil, not 5, right?
Yes, other than me, Terry, and Kel are 3 to have it be 6 million, not 5.
Okay.
We got all 4.
Okay.
So Terry wants to know if we can't just pass it with that simple amendment.
Or vote.
You can, if you want to try to articulate it, then I'll draft it up and send it out and see if it's accurate.
Probably in favor of that.
I think this is an important enough thing. We might want to give John time to make sure it's correct, and we can review it and have another week to think on it and make sure it's all good. I think that we should wait, but that's just my opinion.
So you'd like us to do it?
Yeah, I'd like to do it, and then have John meet the language with the direction that we've just discussed.
All right. So here's the one caveat. I voted against this, so I would not make a motion to amend it. It would have to come from somebody else.
Well, there's somebody else.
If one of you want to make the motion, let's spell out very clearly what changes we're going to make and give him the direction to do it.
So I'm in favor of this, John. Are you comfortable with that, though, if we pass it today and then you just make the written language meet what we've discussed?
Yeah, I could do that. And if there's a question, I can bring it back to you at the next meeting and we can tinker with it again.
Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Okay,
So then
so
I
that's,
can make that motion,
all right.
which is, do you want me to read that?
Well, there were, this number down here was 6 million, and anything, it's your motion.
You're
That,
thinking I can
that,
remember
so,
everything, huh?
that
Just
would,
remember the appraised and 6 mil.
Yeah.
so,
Why don't you make the motion, Terry? You have a,
We don't want
John, how's gonna be the best way to say that? Is it appraised value or, value?
Estimated completion appraised value, estimated completion value. I don't think I'd use the word appraised. Probably use estimated completion value of more than $6 million.
We ensure that the appraisal's coming from a credible source, right? Not just the developer saying that, oh, that's how much we appraised it at.
Do you have an answer for that one, John?
What's that? I didn't hear.
So Kel had a question. If it doesn't come from a credible appraiser, how do we keep a developer from saying, oh, this will be worth $20 million when it's done, when all they did is put a banana stand there?
Well, I think when I'm drafting this, I'll think of things like that and say, as determined by the city in its sole and absolute discretion,
Okay.
or as approved by the city. I mean, when you get into those values and stuff, that becomes fuzzy, and the ultimate decision maker should be the city. We believe your estimate, or we don't believe it.
that's a good point.
So those are things that I would put in, that you probably won't put in your motion, that I'll likely put in the draft or the revision. And maybe on your motion, just say and other things that John thinks is important.
Uh, I think a person could put in there and language that would be added for the protection of the city from the city attorney, maybe.
Okay, so then are we ready for me to make a motion? My motion would be that we approve Resolution 2231, amending, no, 2231, amending our public infrastructure district policy, Erda, to include joint, what do we call that? Joint commercial and residential developments can use the PID policy with a limit
With the mill,
with a limit of mill levies, with a limit of 5 mill levies on residential and 10 on commercial. And also that commercial property would need to be valued at $6 million or more. And what was the other one, Terry?
200,000 square feet.
And 200,000 square feet. Okay, what else have I left out of my motion? Let's see. And all the others are already included, I think, that it has to have a significant value to the city and to residents, both current and future. I think that's already in it, isn't it?
I think it's in there in the other paragraphs, yes.
Okay. And in this motion, we'll ask John, our legal attorney, to make the language in the PID policy meet our discussion.
All right, is there a second?
You could second that, Cale.
What did you say?
We're wondering if there's a second to the motion on this.
Move a second.
All right, it's been moved by Scott and seconded by Paul to adopt resolution 22-31, approving an amendment to the public infrastructure district policy for Erda City.
As amended, right?
Yep, as amended and directed.
Hey, you on the road?
What's that?
Oh, we're sitting down.
All right, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Terry Minor,
No.
Craig Smith is a yes. Kel Martin,
Yes.
Scott Drubay.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on, any comments from council members? Anything from you, John?
Nothing from me.
All right,
I move we adjourn.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Thank you.
See ya. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Kel.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
See that. This comes in the mail.
Oh, where'd that one come from?
Because I got one just like this in the mail. I think I quite like it. They want me to buy 100 of them.
Oh, yeah. I have quite liked that pen.
Maybe.
It writes on hard surfaces, it writes on soft surfaces.
Had it a little while.
A few months. It came from Sterling Elementary. Only the highest quality stuff.